Welcome, curious minds. Today we're embarking on a deep dive into, well, a really complex and critical topic: the recent U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities.
It's definitely got people talking.
Absolutely. You've sent us a stack of sources, and our mission, like always, is to unpack the critical insights and, frankly, some surprising facts.
Yeah.
What we're trying to figure out today is what actually happened, what do we know about the damage, and maybe most importantly, why are there such wildly different assessments of the outcome? This is where it gets truly fascinating.
Indeed. We'll be navigating a pretty nuanced and, let's be honest, often conflicting landscape of information.
Right.
This deep dive should help you understand not just what is being reported, but why these different narratives exist and maybe what questions still linger.
Yeah, that why is key.
The contrast in perspectives here is particularly striking,
Okay, let's unpack this central puzzle right away then. Our sources highlight a pretty significant discrepancy, a big difference, in how different U.S. intelligence agencies and officials are assessing the immediate impact of these strikes.
That's the core of it,
So we're talking about a difference between months and years, or maybe even decades, for Iran's nuclear program to recover. That's huge.
It is huge. So we start with a preliminary assessment. This came from the Defense Intelligence Agency, the DIA.
Okay.
Their initial report suggested that Tehran's nuclear program had only been pushed back by a matter of months.
Just months. Wow.
Specifically, the DIA indicated the entrances to 2 Iranian nuclear sites, and that includes the Fordo facility, were sealed off.
Sealed off? Okay.
However, it also suggested Iran could reconstitute elements of its program relatively quickly.
Wow.
Well, once they managed to dig out and repair basic stuff like water and electrical systems.
So cleanup and basic repairs, essentially.
Pretty much. The assessment even gave a timeline, a sort of range, for regaining access and resuming operations. A few months, they said, maybe up to less than a year.
A few months to less than a year.
But crucially, this DIA assessment, it was issued with low confidence.
Low confidence. Okay, that's a really important distinction in the intelligence world, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely critical.
What does that signal to us about that initial DIA report?
Well, for anyone unfamiliar, a low confidence rating basically means the intel community has significant doubts, maybe about the information's reliability, its accuracy, or perhaps the sources aren't corroborated yet.
It's like a warning label.
Exactly. It's essentially a red flag for policymakers saying, look, this is an initial picture, it's unconfirmed. And it was expected to be refined, as more intelligence came in.
Got it.
Our sources also mentioned, and this adds another wrinkle, that one individual familiar with this DIA assessment indicated that at least some enriched uranium might have been moved from the sites before the bombing.
Moved before. Okay, that complicates things even more.
It certainly does.
So we have this initial low-confidence assessment suggesting a months-long setback, maybe, with this caveat about uranium possibly being moved beforehand.
Yeah.
Yet almost immediately, a starkly different narrative started taking hold, at the highest levels, directly challenging that DIA view.
Precisely. So then we see CIA Director John Ratcliffe issuing a statement. He indicated, and I quote, "A body of credible intelligence shows Iran's nuclear program has been severely damaged by the recent targeted strikes."
Credible intelligence. Okay.
He cited new intelligence from a historically reliable and accurate source method, saying several key Iranian nuclear facilities were destroyed.
Destroyed, not just sealed off.
Right. And he stated these facilities would have to be rebuilt over the course of years, not months.
Years. That's a big jump.
It is. And interestingly, a CIA spokesperson apparently declined to elaborate on the confidence level or the specific source of this intelligence when asked.
That's a significant detail, isn't it? A strong assertion, but without stating the confidence level publicly.
It definitely raises questions.
And then the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, she echoed this view, right? Even posting on X, I think.
Yes, exactly. Gabbard stated that new intelligence confirms what President Trump has stated numerous times. Iran's nuclear facilities have been destroyed.
Okay, using the word destroyed again.
Yes, and she specifically named 3 facilities, Natanz, Fordo, and Esfahan, saying they would all have to be rebuilt entirely, which she said would likely take years to do.
Years again.
An intelligence official did confirm Gabbard's information was based on new American intelligence, but, just like the CIA, also declined to specify its confidence level.
So we have these two top intelligence leaders, Ratcliffe and Gabbard, publicly lining up with a much more impactful assessment than the DIA's initial report.
Correct.
And President Trump himself has been very direct, very forceful about his own assessment of the impact.
He has. President Trump repeatedly asserted that Saturday night's airstrikes just obliterated Iran's nuclear facilities. Yeah, and he claimed the program was set back by basically decades.
So we've gone from months to years to decades now.
Quite the range.
Yeah.
And on that crucial point about the enriched material, remember the DIA suggestion some might have been moved?
Yeah.
President Trump said, we think we hit them so hard and so fast they didn't get to move, which, directly contradicts that DIA assessment's possibility.
A direct contradiction.
Okay. And Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth also weighed in. He stated the damage was extensive and that Iran's nuclear program is obliterated. He even used this image, suggesting you'd need a big shovel and go really deep just to assess Fordo.
Wow. That image alone really paints a picture of utter destruction.
It really does. And adding to that, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, just days after the strikes, said the three targets sustained extremely severe damage and destruction.
Extremely severe.
Though he did acknowledge that a full battle damage assessment, a BDA, would take some time.
Understand.
So you have this whole spectrum, right, from months with explicitly low confidence to years and even decades with these very strong public assertions, but, well, unspecified confidence levels, at least publicly.
It's an extraordinary situation. I mean, when top officials are presenting such wildly different assessments of a major military operation, so what does this all mean when you have such differing views from within the same government about something as critical as nuclear proliferation?
Well, it raises several critical questions, doesn't it? Lawmakers and non-proliferation experts, they've been asking about Iran's potential residual nuclear capabilities.
Meaning what's left? What might still be hidden or intact?
Exactly. And neither Ratcliffe nor Gabbard's public statements directly address those specific concerns. That's a gap. And the conflicting takes on whether enriched uranium was moved or not. That also remains unresolved.
And figuring out residual capabilities after a strike like this must be incredibly difficult.
Oh, absolutely. Especially with a program known for secrecy. It's not just about tallying up the destroyed buildings you can see from satellites.
Right.
It's about what might have been dispersed beforehand, what backup plans exist, what critical knowledge base remains with their scientists.
That uncertainty must make planning next steps really hard.
It really does. It doesn't just complicate the damage assessment. It directly impacts how countries like the U.S. approach any future negotiations.
Are you dealing with a genuinely crippled program, or one that's maybe just gone deeper underground for a while?
And it wasn't just a quiet disagreement about the intelligence, was it? Our sources indicate there was significant political friction around that initial DIA report. It sounds like this public split led to some internal tensions. That seems accurate, yes. Both Ratcliffe's and Gabbard's statements actually included criticism of the leak of that DIA assessment to the media.
Oh, okay.
Administration officials specifically blasted the DIA findings, calling them at odds with the president's own assertions.
So push back against the initial, less severe assessment.
It highlights that tension, between raw intelligence analysis and the narrative that gets presented publicly, especially when high political stakes are involved.
Right. Given all this conflicting information, how does that affect diplomacy? Are there any diplomatic efforts happening after these strikes, and how could these different intelligence pictures possibly influence them?
Well, yes. Despite the strikes, President Trump actually stated that the U.S. and Iran are expected to hold talks next week.
Talks? Already?
Honors. Apparently so, though the exact format is currently unclear. Special envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, he's expected to lead these talks. Reports say he's already spoken with the Iranian foreign minister.
Interesting.
And Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Vice President J.D. Vance have also reportedly become more involved in the diplomatic side now.
But how do you even start talks when there's such fundamental disagreement within your own government about what the other side is even capable of anymore?
That's the massive challenge, isn't it? These talks, assuming they happen, will be occurring against this backdrop of, well, confusion, or at least internal disagreement about the actual status of Iran's program.
Yeah.
Defining objectives, even knowing what leverage you have or what to negotiate about, becomes incredibly tricky.
Yeah, I can see that. And what about congressional oversight? Are lawmakers getting a clearer picture behind closed doors, maybe?
Well, that's the intention. Both Ratcliffe and Gabbard were scheduled for classified Senate briefings. Those got rescheduled, but they're supposed to happen.
Okay.
The House is also expected to be briefed, and Secretary Hegseth is also scheduled to lead a press briefing soon.
So efforts are being made to brief Congress.
Right. The aim is to provide a more detailed and hopefully a more coherent intelligence assessment to lawmakers, which is vital, obviously, for their oversight role and for shaping future policy.
Well, that was quite the deep dive, wasn't it? Into the intelligence, the politics surrounding these strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities.
It really was.
We've seen this clear spectrum of assessments, haven't we? All the way from months to years to decades for recovery. And these conflicting reports on really crucial details, like whether enriched uranium was moved.
Yeah, and I think what this deep dive truly reveals isn't just that intelligence assessments can conflict. We kind of know that happens. It's how deeply that conflict can penetrate the highest levels of government, how it shapes not just how we talk about success or failure after the fact, but how we actually plan for the future.
That's a great point.
And for you, our curious listener, I think the key takeaway is understanding that official statements, especially in these situations, often carry these unseen confidence levels.
Right.
And maybe political motivations, too, that can dramatically alter their true meaning and their real-world impact.
Exactly. So the question really remains, how will these starkly varied intelligence assessments influence policy decisions moving forward? How will they affect future negotiations if they happen? And frankly, how does it impact public trust in official statements?
Big question.
Yeah. What stands out to you, listening right now, as the most significant detail or maybe the most nagging, unresolved question from our discussion today? It's worth thinking about how understanding those different confidence levels or thinking about the potential sources of intelligence might shape your own understanding when you hear about these kinds of impactful global events.